bids are in. The gavel is dropped. Ladies and gentlemen, here at WineBid, we are finally hammered. That's right. This is WineBid's podcast dedicated to all things wine value, wine retail, wine auctions, and just wine. My name is Jeff Kern. I'm on the WineBid marketing team. With me, as always, is my compatriot, Paul Walker, our wine expert, or as he's known in the industry, the Generalissimo of Garnacha. And welcome to the podcast, Paul. Today, we're going to be doing an auction, our wine auction recap. And we're going to be going through, taking a look at everything that happened this very past week.
Everything? We're going to look at everything that happened?
Every single bottle.
We're taking here for quite a while.
Yeah, we're going to be here for a very long time. Everybody strap in. We need to check out 3,487 bottles. But
more than that. It was like, I think.
Well, 3,487 is
over 5,700 bottles sold out. So it's pretty good, pretty busy week.
Wow. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's
kind of crazy.
Everyone wants to ship at the same time, too. So go figure.
So
the warehouse is busy. Anyway,
let's jump right into it.
With L'Abbé Jura winner last week.
Well, yes, the 2019 Julien L'Abbé Côte de Jura, which
every time these wines come up,
I brought this up. This is the finally hammered effect.
You didn't bring it up.
I brought up Jura wines. I mentioned,
but L'Abbé, I would say is like Ganavat in the sense that whenever it comes to auction, people go crazy, and they go a lot more crazy for L'Abbé than they do Ganavat. I would say.
Ever since I brought it up on the podcast, yes, I would agree with you.
Yes, Jeff is single-handedly responsible for its appreciation. So, Jeff,
yes,
why didn't you give people, your wine investment expertise and say buy all the L'Abbé?
Well,
when we started the podcast, why didn't you say buy the L'Abbé that's on the auction and then hold on to it because it's already now we've been doing this for what, a year and a half. So.
I know. Well, just so you know, I did say on last week's podcast, I said these Jura wines, and this is something we've been talking about for like a year. Like every time they come into auction, I don't understand. They always get bid up.
They do.
Like, I do they ever?
And these are young vintages too. They're both Chardonnay from 2019.
They're 19. Yeah, they're 19 shirts. We had two Chardonnays. They had 13 bids on them. They started at $35 and hammered at $120 a bottle.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and I looked just to see, and the Côte de Jura Fleur de Chardonnay. The only other vintage we've sold is the 16, and it's sold for $199 on, let's see, in February. And it's kind of similar situation. There were two bottles of it, and they got bid up like absolutely crazy. They started at $25 and bid up to $199. So,
the Les Varens Chardonnay was number 3. That had 10 bids, taking from $50 to $120 as well, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. These wines are very, very hot for sure.
We had the 14 du Jacques, Phil and Perret, Gevrey Chambertin.
So this is the negociant. This is the negociant level. So at $70, you're like, 14, great Burgundy vintage. Not a bad deal. But
$80,
$80, 6 bottles. It's still not that bad. That's not terrible.
It's not crazy. I thought was interesting. The 82 Casa Farina Dora Barca Vela. This one, we had 3 of them. They started at 308 bids, took them to selling at just around $450.
Yeah, I flagged these because, you and I both review items every week, and we often don't get a chance to review, everything under the sun. And this is kind of one of those rare wines that stuck out to me. I was like, wait a minute, dry red wine from Douro, from, port is best known for, obviously. But there's also some really, really phenomenally great and complex and interesting red wine, dry red wine, I should say, from the Douro. And this is an old example. And there must be a serious collector following. Jeff always calls me an expert, but I'm not.
Yes,
I don't know a whole lot, but I do enjoy finding out and learning about these things. And I noticed that this wine, oddly enough, had a suckling score of 94, which I imagine he probably rated in more recent times.
Yeah, not 1983.
I'm suspecting that this wine, he rated it in October 2022, right? So how did James Suckling get a hold of a bottle of this last year, which would lead me to believe that maybe the winery released. And also, do you see the fill on this thing? It's perfect. The label's not in the most amazing condition, but it looks to me like it was a late release from the winery.
Like this.
Although the back label on it, it's kind of hard to tell because it was imported by a place in Riverside, Connecticut, oddly enough. And it looks like a back label, I would say, from maybe the early 2000s or the 90s, maybe. So anyway, I'm just very curious about this stuff. I got to look it up.
So this is something that I was told by a local wine shop owner and somebody, and I have no idea if this is actually true, but I'm going to say it with the caveat that I have not been able to verify this, even though I've tried, but this is what I've heard. What I have heard is that when it comes to wine grown in Portugal, there's a law that says vineyards can only use a certain percentage of the grapes that they pick for port. So they have to make some amount of dry red wine. And that what this person was telling me, as of course they were selling me a dry red wine from Portugal. So it was very much in their best interest to say this. What they told me was that you actually get some amazing dry red wine because they're sort of forced, like even some of the top port makers are forced to use very high quality grapes to make dry red wine rather than port. They'd rather make port because they make more money off of it than they make off of dry red wine. So he seemed to think or purport that there is a lot of amazing dry red wine coming out of Portugal, or that is made in Portugal. It's just not very well known because Portugal's known for port.
Well, turns out Casa Ferreira, I don't know how to pronounce it properly, is apparently a pioneer brand and leader in non-fortified Douro wines. So apparently they've been making dry red wine in the Douro for many, 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 many years. And apparently it's very, very collectible and very, very good. So now we have to go find some and drink it. That's the next plan.
I thank you for volunteering to find some that you and I can drink, Paul.
Anyway, if we try to find the 82, it's going to cost us close to $450 a piece.
I mean, unless it continues to appreciate in price, in which case we've got this. I'm going to move on to this 2017 Pierre-Yves Colin-Moret Santenay Lavier 8-bit. We have 4 bottles, 8 bits, took them from 65 to 76. That's
interesting.
That's a good amount of appreciation there.
Yeah, interesting too, because Colin-Moret is more, I think, known for white wines than the red wines, and so I'm kind of interesting to see one of the reds get bid up, multiple times. Also, there were 4 bottles, so it wasn't like there was just a single one. But Colin-Moret is just great winemaker, great producer. Just seems like everything he does, people just go after. So
I think it turns to gold. We had talked about this last week. The 94 Weinbach Riesling Schlossberg.
We mentioned that this was. I was barking at you about bringing up, Zinhambrecht every week and saying that's all you ever do.
I brought up Weinbach last week. I was going to Weinbachs because I
said that
jumped in.
The one interesting Alsatian wine for me last week was this particular 94 Weinbach Schlossberg, and sure enough,
I don't think you appreciate Alsatian wine enough. Like, I genuinely don't think you appreciate it enough. And I feel like, it would do you good to get some more experience with Alsatian wine, especially Zinhambrecht. But this 94 Weinbach started at 50, 8 bits took it to $94. But you're talking about something with, look, next year it's going to have 30 years of age on it, right? 29 years, it almost has 30 years of age. It's a Riesling, so probably it's got a nice structure that's going to carry it for a while. Bet you that stuff is singing right now. And this is one of their, flagship wines, right?
Well, it's weird too, because looking back at the history, this is the only time we've ever sold it. So that's pretty crazy to me, because, we've definitely sold a lot of Weinbach, but the Schlossberg, forget it. That's a rare one. Interestingly, also the 94 got a giant score from Parker a bunch of years ago. So I guess it kind of retains
some value. But let me just say, I still don't think, even after 8 bids taken from 50 to 94, I still don't think $94 is a crazy amount for a bottle like that, right? You're talking,
no, especially considering how rare it is, right? If we've only ever sold it once,
right?
That's not easy to replace.
Go, like anyone on here, go into your local wine store and go anywhere in your town and find me a bottle of Schlossberg Cuvée Saint Catherine. Like I just don't think you're going to be able. If you do, maybe one, two.
No, like
you're going to find a bevy. You might find ones in every vintage.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, it's like you say, it doesn't get enough respect, kind of even among, I would say, a lot of serious wine collectors. They're probably not, I would say Alsace is probably not well represented in a lot of people's collections in general. But
speak for yourself, Paul. I love my Alsatian wine. I love it.
I just drink it. If I buy it off the auction, it's gone. Like I bring it home and drink it.
It's too good.
I don't buy them young and age them for years and years and years. Like I guess you could do.
That's my other secret. Like for anybody that wants to like sound like they're a wine expert like Paul or sommelier, when someone's like, "What should I pair with?" It's just always go Riesling. Alsatian,
yeah, it's true.
Like Alsatian Riesling, I feel like pairs with 99% of things at least that I eat.
It's a safe bet. It is a great pairing wine with everything.
That and I feel like.
Wine pairing is also kind of ridiculous in and of itself, but no, it's true. And actually, Jeff, I don't know if you noticed this, but this week I think there's a 92 Schlossberg in that's already got bids on it. Anyway, so we're getting carried away here, but yes, there's a 92 Riesling Schlossberg this week, which is pretty wild because that's already got a bid. But I'm curious just to see where that goes.
Crazy, that's the year I was born. Is what I tell people. Okay, 04 Chateau de Pouligny-Montrachet Meursault Terriers. 7 bids, took it from 55 to 130.
Yeah, well, it's sort of the magic vineyard, in Meursault. That's kind of the most heralded place. Chateau de Pouligny-Montrachet, I, again, as a non-expert, don't have a ton of experience with this producer. Obviously, they're based in Pouligny.
What's a chateau? Yeah, it's a chateau in Pouligny-Montrachet.
So, but I'm saying I don't know their Meursault, right? They're not in Meursault. They're in Pouligny-Montrachet. It's a different world. Even if they're relatively close neighbors, I always associated Pouligny-Montrachet with Pouligny-Montrachet.
Well, what they do is they have their chateau in Pouligny-Montrachet, which is right next door, and they pick over the fence.
Jeff, if you've ever been to Burgundy, you would know where Pouligny-Montrachet is in relation to Meursault. So they're actually not that close.
Well, they use like a fishing
trebuchet.
Yeah, trebuchet, a reverse trebuchet to get. They have long arms.
No, you know what's weird is this wine was in last year, and it sold for $56. So what's going on here?
I
just exploded. And
I will tell you, it is in the bottle itself is in beautiful condition.
Yeah, it is. But still, it's like in 16, it sold for 45. And then years later in 2022, last year, it sold for 55 consistently, like not just once, or twice, but consistently through the year. And then all of a sudden this year, it blew up to 130. It's pretty interesting.
Did you see this 03 Gloria? I thought I mentioned this. Started at $40, 7 bids, took it to 51. I still think that's a great deal for a 20 bottle.
Gloria. It's always a great deal. It's great wine. It's never been terribly expensive. It's still not terribly expensive, especially, that's great. 20-year-old example, hot Bordeaux vintage, but I think a lot of them are holding together well and still taste great. So that's a nice score. Even at, like you said, at $51, not bad.
What do we got next here?
Did you want to look at some heavy hitters?
Let's.
Some of these I did want to mention real quick. The Kalin, there was a batch of Kalin wines in, which have a kind of a cult following, very off the beaten path California winery and producer that holds wine back for many years before they're released. And I think I want to say like the mid 90s Cuvée, Cuvée W Chardonnay or something was just released recently. But there was a Cuvée DD Pinot Noir from 2000 that was in. They didn't hammer for astronomical prices, but it did get a lot of interest and activity. Anyway, fun to see some Kalen wines. There are some Semillon also 40, I think it hammered for $46 a piece, a couple bottles.
Before we jump over, I'll mention two things. There's an 84 Bonneau du Matre Corton Chard.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. I mean, went from
84 is like, that's a strange vintage. Well, not a strange, but it's not considered a great vintage in many places. And this is another one where good luck finding a replacement to this. I think, again, this is probably the only time we've ever sold that wine, at least.
That one's just rare. The other one I thought I'd mention really quickly was because I had put in bids on this, but I got outbid because I love this wine, especially this vintage, the 2012 Colleen Clemens Vineyard Estate Adrian Pinot Noir, started at 25, which I think was less than I bought it for like 8 years ago, 6 years ago when I bought it like at Costco of all places. I think it was like $35 a bottle. I was like, this is so tasty. And I went out and bought a bunch. And I think I'm on my last bottle now. So when I saw this, I was like, I'm going to pick some of that up because that stuff is delicious. Nope, it's not 25. It's $38 a bottle. $36 a bottle now.
Hey, did you notice too that the one inexpensive Domaine Leflaive wine last week didn't actually go for a huge amount of money? I mean, it's Macon Verzé. It's not Chevalier Montrachet, but still, I think all of them hammered at under $60, which still to me sounds like a decent deal for Domaine Leflaive. I mean, you're not getting wines from Chevalier or from Pouligny or Chassagne, but it's pretty incredible.
And then I'll say one last one. This 04 Conchi Toro Don Melchor Cabernet Sauvignon started at 75, 6 bids, took it to 110.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Cool. That's pretty interesting. Don Melchor, you don't. It's another rare wine, right? You don't see older Don Melchor at all.
No, and you certainly don't think of it as something that gets a lot of action at auction.
It's very popular, and it's always gets huge scores. I think from Spectator. I think it even got #1 wine one year. But it's popular wine and it's well known, but. That's another impossible to replace example for sure. For sure.
And that one was in great condition. Let's head over to the heavy hitters. Right at the top, 1 and 2 were both 2015 Domaine Loise. Top billing was the Richebourg at 10,500. Number 2 was the Romani Saint-Pavant at 9,000. Number 3 was another Burgundy. We've got the 2012 Domaine de la Romani Conti La Tâche for 5,000 for La Tâche. I feel like La Tâche usually comes in a little bit lower than that, but I guess it is 2012. That was interesting. And then number 4, we're back to Domaine Loire, the La Tossière Chambertin. Am I saying that correctly?
La Tossière.
La Tossière, that's what I said. And I'm getting closer every time. That one sold for 4,900. Number 5 was the 87 Henri Jaillet Von Romani Les Brûlés. Which sold for $47.85. And then 2 more DRCs, 2 more La Tâche, another 15 La Tâche at $47.45, an 18 La Tâche at $47.20, and then an 08 La Tâche at $46.65, an 07 La Tâche at $40.
It is interesting actually that you're right about that the 12 went from, I would have expected the 15 or even the 18 to go for more than the 12, but go figure. That's 5.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, first of all, we talked about this last week. There was just a bevy of Domaine Romani Conti coming to auction, and it's probably not surprising to see it all. Maybe it was a little bit surprising for me to see it all all of this immediately go. But look, DRC is, as you say, it's highly sought after. And then there was an 87 jet. I mean, look, it was like 87 jet, more Domaine Romani Conti. Basically, to summarize, too long, didn't read, TLDR, it's a bunch of Burgundy. It's sold for a ton of money. Is everyone shocked?
Yeah,
right. True. Let's take a look at records.
Wrap everything up. I wanted to talk about Bond. Once again, we had a Bond 6-pack 01 horizontal numbered at 2,500, which... Again, this stuff is really, week after week, we keep mentioning it's just going crazy. Charles Lachaud, Bourgogne Aligoté at 600, which is a lot of money for Aligoté, but Charles Lachaud's got a real following.
15 Angros Richebourg for
Richebourg, 800. That's kind of in line, I think, of where it should be. It makes sense. It's very expensive, but not crazy. 87 Henri Jaillet Nuit Merger.
39,
45. Pretty serious.
I mean, it's there
100
was
acre doing well too. 0200 acre Kaylee Morgan at 580. That's another one of those, mailing list wines from California that seem to not perform incredibly well over the years, and then kind of came back, and now it's, it's obviously it's 21-year-old vintage, but still doing quite well. Saxon James Barry Magnum for $6.95, which is pretty crazy. Although it is the 07, which is the perfect score. So
what about this multi-vintage Jacques Salas Brut Rosé for $8.45, Hein record? Previous high was $7.40.
Yeah, that's going up and up and up. Not too surprising considering other Salas wines are on fire, but $8.45 for the rosé is a lot.
17 vice versa the Magnificent 7 Cabernet Sauvignon for $5.10.
Yeah, that's
17.
That's a lot. Vice versa from a tricky vintage from 17.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like 17 is 16, okay.
That's gotta be a
13,
super rare wine. I can't imagine there's a lot of it. I know it got some big scores, but that doesn't really seem to matter.
But what's crazy to me is the most recent hammer at another auction house was like 228.
Yeah.
So less than half.
It's weird. I think it's just a really, really rare bottling. There's just not a lot of it. So yeah, a lot of records last week. So, and all over the place.
A lot of crazy stuff going on. Check out this week. We have a ton of stuff in auction. We're going to work on putting out a couple of episodes to review the stuff we have coming in auction. There's a lot of really cool stuff. Don't bid on anything that I've already bid on, please. And with that concludes Finally Hammered for this week. It's been Jeff McGurn and Paul Walker for WineBid, wishing you a happy bidding and cheers.
Cheers.